I slid onto the white-painted wooden chair, its familiar creak echoing through the kitchen I'd once called home. The air hung thick with the scent of pot roast and garlic bread, curling around me like a warm memory. Across the table sat my parents, Robert and Susan, their faces etched with lines I swore weren't there last year. My twin brothers, Ethan and Jacob, sprawled in their seats, all lanky limbs and restless energy at 25. The table was simple, chipped plates, a faded tablecloth. But it was ours. Or it used to be. Tonight, the clatter of forks felt too loud, the dim light from the overhead bulb too harsh. I speared a piece of roast, the juices pooling on my plate, and let the aroma pull me back. Family dinners, they'd been my anchor, Friday nights with Mom's cooking, Dad's quiet grumbles about work, the boys bickering over the last roll. I'd sit there, the eldest at 32, soaking it in, believing this was where I belonged. But tonight, something shifted. Ethan's smirk caught my eye, sharp and knowing. Jacob leaned back, arms crossed, his gaze flickering with something I couldn't place. My stomach tightened. Susan cleared her throat, her voice slicing through the haze, carefully composed. "Victoria, we want to talk to you about an important decision." I set my fork down, its metal cool against my fingers. Robert straightened, his tone steady but lacking its usual warmth. "We've finalized our will, and we want you to hear it from us now so there's no confusion later." Confusion? My pulse quickened, a dull thud in my ears. I glanced at Mom, her hands twisting the edge of her napkin, then at Dad, his jaw tight. The boys watched me, Ethan's grin widening, Jacob's eyes glinting. The pot roast turned sour in my mouth. This wasn't just dinner. It was a reckoning. I swallowed hard, the weight of their stares pinning me to the chair. Whatever came next, I knew it'd change everything. And deep down, I wasn't sure I was ready. Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, a smug smirk curling his lips. To put it simply, everything goes to us. The words hit like a slap, sharp and cold. I froze. "What?" Jacob repeated it, his tone light, like he was tossing out some casual fact. "Mom and Dad are leaving the house, the beach condo, all their assets to us. You get nothing." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of traffic drifting in from the quiet suburban street outside. My fork clattered against the plate, a jarring sound that snapped me back. I turned to Mom, her face a mask of forced calm, waiting for her to deny it, to laugh it off as some cruel joke. But she only gave a small, firm nod. "We think this is for the best," she said, her voice tight, her fingers clutching that damn napkin like a lifeline. "You have a stable career, a solid income, but Ethan and Jacob, they're still finding their way. They need more support." Support? Pain surged through my chest, hot and jagged, twisting with a rising anger I couldn't choke down. I'd paid over half their mortgage for years, covered medical bills when Dad's insurance fell short, sent cash to Ethan every time he flunked a semester, to Jacob when he needed a new laptop for his latest scheme. And now this? I turned to Dad, desperate for a crack in his resolve, some hint of hesitation. But he just stared at his water glass, avoiding me, his silence louder than any words. "So, after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything?" My voice wavered, despite my grip on the table's edge, the wood biting into my palms. I couldn't hide the hurt, raw and spilling out. Mom sighed, her eyes narrowing with that familiar disappointment. "Victoria, you always make everything about money." I clenched my hands under the table, nails digging into my skin. "It's not about money," I said, forcing my voice steady, though it shook at the edges. "It's about fairness, about how I've always been there when you needed me. But now, just because I don't lean on you, I'm nothing to this family?" Ethan let out a short, barking laugh, shaking his head. "You're being dramatic. No one forced you to help. You just liked playing the martyr. Jacob chuckled, amusement flickering in his eyes. Maybe you thought if you threw enough cash our way, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us. His words landed like a punch, stealing my breath. I looked to my parents, waiting for them to correct him, to call out his cruelty. Nothing. They sat there, mute, and in that silence, I understood. I wasn't their daughter, I was their bank, and they'd just cashed me out. Jacob's laugh still echoed in my skull as I stared at them, Mom's pinched lips, Dad's averted eyes, Ethan's smug tilt of the head. The air in the kitchen thickened, the scent of pot roast now cloying, meaningless. Pain swelled in my throat, a lump I couldn't swallow. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the storm inside. "All right," I said, my voice even, though my heart pounded like a drum. "If that's your decision, then I have one of my own." Ethan raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Oh, and what's that?" I didn't answer him. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the linoleum a jagged farewell. I stood, legs trembling but firm, and turned away from the table. Their faces blurred behind me, triumphant, stunned, silent. I walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last, the warmth of childhood dinners fading with every breath. No one stopped me, no one called my name. The door clicked shut, a sound so final it cut through the night. Outside, the crisp air stung my cheeks, a sharp contrast to the heat pulsing at my temples. I climbed into my car, hands shaking on the wheel. The radio stayed off. I needed the silence, craved it. Driving home, the suburban streets stretched endless and empty, headlights slicing through the dark. Why was I even surprised? Hadn't I always known, deep down, that I was their financial safety net, nothing more? For over a decade, I'd poured myself into them. Money, time, every ounce of care I had. And they'd taken it, every dime, then tossed me aside like an empty wrapper. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, the cushions sinking under me. My hands still trembled as I unlocked my phone. The screen's glow harsh against the dim room. Their words replayed, cutting deeper with each loop. Ethan's taunt. "You liked playing the martyr," Jacob's jab. "Maybe you thought money would make them love you." And my parents' silence, the loudest betrayal of all. I'd done everything right, worked late nights, skipped vacations, sent checks when they called crying about bills. For what? To be erased from their future? The realization burned, bitter and clear. They didn't need me. They never had. Not as a daughter, not as Victoria, just as a paycheck. And I was done being that. The apartment felt different that night, smaller somehow, but mine. The couch creaked as I shifted, staring at my phone. The banking app glared back, numbers stark and unyielding. $1,900 every month to Mom and Dad for the mortgage. $1,200 more whenever Ethan or Jacob whined about rent or car payments. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, a steady rhythm of rage and exhaustion. I'd accepted this burden for years, called it duty, responsibility. But this was their choice. They'd made that clear at dinner. No one forced me to keep it up. My finger hovered over the screen. 1 second. 2. I pressed cancel. A notification popped up, cold and final. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave crashed over me. Anger, bitterness, but something else too. Relief, sharp and sudden, like a weight slipping off my shoulders. I set the phone down, sinking deeper into the couch, letting the silence settle. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't carrying them. Sleep didn't come. I lay awake, replaying the years, the vacations I'd skipped to cover their bills, the overtime I'd worked to fund Ethan's latest major switch, Jacob's influencer dreams, sacrifices I'd made, believing they mattered. But when I'd needed just one sign, one nod that I was enough, they'd given me nothing. The next morning, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Mom. I hesitated, then answered. Victoria, did you cancel this month's payment? Susan's voice was sharp, worry masked with that old disappointment. I took a deep breath. Yes, Mom, because I realized I don't have to do this anymore. Silence stretched, heavy. What do you mean? She snapped. Family supports each other. You know we rely on that money for the bills. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice steady. Mom, family only matters to you when I'm paying for it. I've helped for years, but I still don't mean anything to you. Her tone rose, accusing. You're being selfish, Victoria. Why are you acting this way, just because of the will? Everything isn't about money. I laughed, dry and hollow. Not about money. I've been the one keeping this family afloat. If it's not about money, why don't you ask Ethan and Jacob to step up? More silence. I could see her face in my mind, angry, cornered. I can't believe you're acting like this, she finally said, cold. This isn't the Victoria I raised. I closed my eyes, the weight in my chest shifting. Mom, this is me. But you never really saw me. I hung up before she could reply, my thumb trembling over the screen. No tears, just clarity. I wasn't their ATM anymore, and for once that felt right. 2 days later, I trudged up the stairs to my apartment, the weight of work clinging to me like damp clothes. My key hovered over the lock, but something was wrong. The door wouldn't budge. I pressed my hand against the frame, fingers brushing a hard, cold surface. Industrial foam, sealing every crack, the handle encased in a solid, gray mass. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. This wasn't an accident. Someone had locked me out of my own home. I stepped back, breath shallow, and grabbed my phone. The hallway security camera app loaded slowly, too slowly. I fast-forwarded through the footage, eyes scanning the grainy blur, until there he was, Jacob, hunched in a hoodie and baseball cap, his stride unmistakable. He held a spray can, smirking as he filled the gaps, deliberate, spiteful. My hands trembled, rage boiling up my spine. This wasn't just anger. It was retaliation. A line crossed into something darker. Without hesitation, I dialed the police. They arrived within the hour, flashlights cutting through the dim hall. I handed over the footage, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. That's my brother, Jacob Miller. He did this. An officer watched the clip, nodding slowly. Do you want to press charges, Ms. Williams? I gripped my phone tighter, the chill of the foam still on my fingertips. If I let this go, it'd escalate. Jacob wouldn't stop. I met the officer's gaze, firm. Yes, I want him held accountable. They took my statement, the foam's chemical stink lingering as they pried at the door. I stood there, watching, the reality sinking in. My family wasn't just cutting me out. They were fighting back, claws out. Jacob's stunt wasn't a prank. It was a message. But I wasn't the sister who'd roll over anymore. I'd given them everything, money, time, my sanity, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Now, they'd face consequences, not me. As the police left, promising updates, I exhaled, the anger settling into something colder, sharper. This was war, and I wasn't backing down. The next day, my phone buzzed with a call from Dad. I ignored it. Then Ethan, then Dad again. Finally, I picked up, bracing myself. Victoria, your brother got called in by the police, Robert barked, his voice harsh, accusing. How could you do this to your own family? I leaned against my kitchen counter, the cool edge grounding me. Jacob vandalized my apartment, Dad. He sealed my door shut. If he doesn't want charges, he can pay for the damages. His tone dropped, incredulous. How much? I didn't hesitate. $3,000. How could you extort your own brother like this? He snapped. I let out a dry chuckle, the sound brittle. It's not extortion, Dad. It's consequences. He hung up, the line dead before I could say more. By morning, my account pinged. A $3,000 transfer attached to a note from Jacob. I never want to see you again. I read it, felt nothing, and moved on. But the storm wasn't over. That afternoon, a message from my cousin popped up. Victoria, is this true? People are saying you abandoned your family when they're struggling. I frowned, unease prickling my skin. Another text followed, from an old friend. How could you cut off your parents and brothers? They took care of you your whole life. I opened Facebook, and there it was, Mom's post, a long, tear-stained lie. She'd written that I'd turned my back on them in their time of need, that I was selfish, money-obsessed, leaving my aging parents and struggling brothers with nothing. Comments poured in, strangers offering sympathy, relatives vilifying me. So sad when kids forget where they came from, one wrote. Money's gone to her head, another sneered. Anger flared in my chest, hot and fierce. They'd twisted everything, omitted the mortgage I'd paid, the tuition I'd covered, Jacob's vandalism. I'd been their lifeline, not their villain. I sat in silence, weighing my options. Stay quiet, let them win the narrative. Number I'd taken their crap for too long. I opened my app, fingers flying as I typed. If my family wants to make this public, here's the truth. I laid it out. Every dollar I'd sent for 10 years, the $1,900 monthly mortgage, the cash for Ethan's cars, Jacob's schemes. I wrote about the will, the foam on my door, the police. I didn't turn my back on them, I finished. They never saw me as family unless I was paying. Now, I'm done. I hit post. Within hours, it exploded. Relatives messaging, shocked, asking questions. An aunt DM'd, "Did you really support them all those years?" Mom called, furious, her voice shaking. "Victoria, what the hell did you do?" I stayed calm, cool. "I told the truth, Mom. If you can tell your version, so can I." She sputtered, breathless. "You're humiliating us. Your father's ashamed to leave the house. Have you thought about Ethan and Jacob?" I gripped the phone tight. Did they think about me when Jacob trashed my home? When I was breaking my back for you all? Silence. Then, cold as ice. "You're destroying this family. Don't expect to come back." I took a deep breath. "Mom, you destroyed it, not me." I hung up, no regrets, just relief. After that call, they went silent. No more furious rants from Dad, no venomous texts from Ethan, no pleas from Mom. I'd lost them, or maybe I'd never had them. I blocked their numbers one by one, my thumb steady on the screen. The quiet that followed felt strange, unfamiliar, like a room I'd never stepped into. I set my phone down and walked to the balcony, the night breeze brushing my skin, cool and clean. The city hummed below, lights flickering, alive and indifferent. For the first time I breathed easy. Ethan's last text lingered in my mind. "You're a traitor." And Mom's parting shot, "You've changed." I whispered to myself, "No, I've just begun." The words settled, true and solid. I wasn't their doormat anymore, their endless ATM. I'd given them everything, money, years, pieces of myself, and they'd spat it back. Now, no more guilt trips, no late-night calls begging for cash. I was weightless, untethered, and it scared me how good it felt. I leaned against the railing, the metal cold under my palms, and thought about the house I'd grown up in. The kitchen, the pot roast dinners, they'd been a lie, a stage for their demands. I'd clung to that memory, thinking it meant love. But love doesn't drain you dry. They'd cut me from their will, their lives, expecting me to beg. Instead, they'd handed me freedom, raw and unasked for. I didn't need their approval, their crumbs of affection. I had me, Victoria, not their bank. The next morning, I woke to silence, no buzzing phone, no accusations. I made coffee, the drip steady, the mug warm in my hands. The apartment felt bigger, mine in a way it hadn't before. I glanced at the bank app. No transfers scheduled, no red numbers screaming debt. Just my money, my life. I stepped back onto the balcony, the sun rising over the skyline, painting it gold. This was it, my start, my rules. They'd let me go, or I'd let them go. Either way, I wasn't looking back. The breeze carried away the last of their hold, and I stood there, free. Weeks later, I booked a ticket to Italy. I'd dreamed of it forever. Florence's winding streets, the art, the air. But every time I'd saved up, Mom's voice would echo, "We need help with the bills." Not anymore. I landed in Florence, the plane's hum fading into a new rhythm. Cobblestones under my feet, espresso drifting from outdoor cafes. The city buzzed, alive, and I felt it too. A spark I hadn't known I'd lost. No one here needed me to pay their way. I was just Victoria, free to breathe. I wandered through narrow alleyways, past terracotta rooftops glowing in the sun. Museums swallowed my afternoons, Renaissance paintings I'd only seen in books, their colors pulling me in. One evening, I sat in a small cafe near Piazza della Signoria, sipping a cappuccino, the foam warm against my lips. A voice broke the quiet. "You seem to really like this place." I looked up, meeting warm brown eyes and a relaxed smile. He had light hair, a easy confidence. "Alex Carter," he said, pulling out a chair without asking. "I think I just fell in love with this city," I replied, smiling back, the words light on my tongue. We talked, hours slipping by unnoticed. He was 34, from New York, an interior designer obsessed with European architecture. His voice was calm, steady, sometimes laced with humor that made me laugh without effort. No pressure, no expectations, just two strangers connecting under an Italian sky. "This is my third time back," he said, grinning. I raised an eyebrow. "A loyal traveler, huh?" "Something like that," he shrugged, and I liked how simple it felt. The next few days blurred into a dream. Alex joined me at markets, haggling over trinkets, his laughter bright against the chatter. We sampled gelato, pistachio, tart, and sweet, walked the Arno River as the sunset painted it gold. He didn't ask about my past, my family. He saw me, not my burdens, and it hit me how rare that was. One night, on a rooftop terrace, the city lights glowed below, and I smiled to myself. I'd once thought happiness hinged on them, Mom, Dad, the boys. I'd given enough, I'd thought, to earn their love. But here, with pasta on my plate and wine in my glass, I knew better. Back home, work noticed. I'd thrown myself into a project, laser-focused, finishing it early. The promotion letter came a week after I returned, my new office overlooking the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. I stood there proud, no one to share it with but myself, and that was enough. Alex texted sometimes, casual, "Miss Florence yet?" I did, but I missed me there most, unburdened, alive. Italy hadn't just been a trip. It was proof I could build something new, something mine, and I wasn't letting go of that. Months passed, and whispers about my old family started filtering in. I was pouring coffee one morning, the steady drip filling my mug, when my phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Karen, Mom's cousin, flickered on the screen. "Victoria, I know you don't care about them anymore, but your parents are struggling. Robert's working night shifts at a warehouse. Susan's taking hourly cleaning jobs. They look exhausted." I paused, staring at the words, the steam curling up from my cup. I'd seen this coming. They'd leaned on me for years, never planning beyond my checks. Now, reality hit them hard. I set the phone down, no reply forming in my mind. A few days later, a friend mentioned Ethan had lost his job. Too many late nights, not enough effort. Jacob, still chasing his influencer dream, posted filtered photos but got nowhere, likes drying up. I wasn't surprised. They'd had every chance to stand on their own, to learn what I'd learned. Work, grit, survival. Instead, they'd banked on me, and when I walked away, their house of cards collapsed. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharp on my tongue, but I felt no guilt, no pull to fix it. Their decline wasn't my burden anymore. I'd carried them too long, pouring my life into theirs while they took without thanks. Now they faced the mess they'd made, and I stood apart, steady. The mug warmed my hands, the kitchen quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I'd built something here, my space, my peace, and they couldn't touch it. Karen's text lingered, a faint echo of their world, but it didn't pull me back. They'd chosen their path, just as I'd chosen mine, and I was done looking over my shoulder. Christmas loomed, and I'd once dreaded it, imagining an empty table, no calls from Mom, no chaos from Ethan and Jacob. But as December rolled in, I felt lighter. I decided to host, my apartment glowing with strung lights, the city twinkling beyond the balcony. Aunt Karen arrived first, her arms full of homemade cookies, their buttery scent mingling with pine from the small tree I'd set up. She hugged me tight, her voice soft against my ear. "I'm so proud of you, Victoria." I smiled, pouring her wine. "You are the only one who's ever said that." Friends trickled in, bringing laughter, bottles clinking, desserts piled high. The room buzzed with warmth. No forced chatter, no demands for cash to save the day. We ate, talked, the fire crackling in the corner, and I laughed more than I had in years of stiff family dinners. Karen caught my eye across the table, her gaze knowing. "I just wish they'd seen your worth before it was too late," she said, sipping her drink. I shrugged, the weight of her words soft now, not sharp. I don't need them to anymore. Later, as the clock struck midnight, I stepped onto the balcony, wine glass in hand. The city sprawled below, lights blinking like stars, the air crisp against my skin. I'd built this. Friends who stayed, a night that was mine. No invisible burdens dragging me down. Family wasn't blood, I realized, sipping the wine, its warmth spreading through me. It was love without strings, people who saw me, not my wallet. They'd cut me out thinking I'd crumble, but I'd found something better. Karen joined me, her coat pulled tight. "You're happy," she said, not a question. I nodded, the skyline glowing in my eyes. "Yeah, for me, not them." She squeezed my arm, and we stood there, the silence comfortable. This Christmas, my first without their shadow, wasn't lonely. It was full. Real. The laughter inside echoed out, a sound I'd earned. I'd let go, and it was the best gift I'd ever given myself, wrapped in lights and freedom. I sat in my armchair, wine glass cradled in my hands, the city lights reflecting off the window. Outside, cars hummed, people moved, the world spinning on, but in here, a stillness wrapped around me, soft and new. I'd once believed family was everything, blood, duty, sacrifice, no matter the cost. I'd told myself if I gave enough, emptied my pockets and my heart, they'd love me back, see me as more than their fix. But they never did, and that truth had carved me open. The will, the foam, the lies. They'd cut me out, a final stamp of my worth to them. Nothing, unless I paid. I'd thought it'd break me, leave me begging for their scraps. Instead, it freed me. I set the glass down, the clink sharp in the quiet. They'd handed me my life, raw and unshackled, and I'd taken it. No more late-night pleas, no guilt trips pulling me under. I could travel, laugh, breathe, choose me without apology. My eyes drifted to the phone, silent on the table, no missed calls, no echoes of their voices. Friends filled that space now, Karen's pride, Alex's easy smile from Florence. Family wasn't what I'd been born into, it was what I built, who stayed when I had nothing left to give. I stood, the room steady under my feet, and felt it. Power, mine alone. I'd been their bank, their crutch, but now I was Victoria, whole, free. The lights outside pulsed, alive like me, and I knew, sipping the last of my wine, this life was mine to live, not theirs to take.